Hello, everyone. My name is Brad Shimon, and I welcome you to our latest Omdia webinar. Today's topic is Enterprise Modernization in the Age of Java, how to perform digital transformation in the enterprise without losing your mind. It is sponsored by Omdia and our partner Oracle, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. And as I mentioned, my name is Brad Shimon. I am the chief analyst at Omdia, looking at AI platforms, analytics, data management, software development, cloud enablement, et cetera. It is very much my pleasure to welcome as my guest today Manish Gupta, who's the VP Global Marketing for Java and Graal VM at Oracle. And he's going to dive into some interesting details on the evolution of Java. So welcome, Manish.
Thank you, Brad.
All right, so everyone, for my part, I'm going to start with a short presentation, and I'm going to walk you through some of the ways digital transformation is driving IT investment. I'll touch a little bit on the difficulties of realizing those investments, and I'll finish with a couple of ways that Java is evolving to help companies succeed with digital transformation, basically by helping them balance trust and innovation. So if it is true that software is eating the world, and we all know that it is also true, especially in the enterprise, that the enterprise lives on programming languages, and most notably Java. Its innate skill at handling some really tough problems like memory management and multi-threading, its adeptness at running across disparate platforms, those have really served the language well and have been defining characteristics that I think have helped Java to reach a level of appeal, global level of appeal that's lasted for over a quarter of a century now. But also right now, the enterprise is changing. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic shattered our supply chains and shuttered our in-person commerce and scattered our corporate workforce, the enterprise was already efforting to recreate itself via what I feel is a fairly tectonic shift. And that was turning away from monolithic, even multi-tiered client-server applications to adopt a more distributed, dexterous, and perhaps even eventually intelligent approach to enterprise software development. And for a lot of companies, that dexterity has definitely come in quite handy over the last 20 months. We've seen organizations really accelerating their digital transformation projects, moving from POC to production across a number of use cases, most notably optimizing their business operations, gaining visibility into supply chains, and embracing a more virtual means of engaging with their customers. In support of these and many other use cases, companies are actively investing in a host of digital technologies. And I've listed the top 4 here that we track at Omdia. They're basically looking for new communication modalities like 5G. They're looking to gain actionable insights and predict some desired outcomes, AI. They're looking to instrument their business, both physical and virtual. And to me, most importantly, they're looking to build an underlying data architecture that's capable of supporting and driving everything on the left side. As you might expect, the preferred architecture for doing this is also shifting, and companies are moving to the cloud. We all know that, but they're also moving away from what I'll refer to as a lower level of abstraction. So we've had virtualization for quite some time. We get it. But now the companies are building their software, and they're expecting the software that they buy or subscribe to leverage new layers of abstraction where you're able to actually separate storage from compute so that you can do a lot of interesting things. So you can, for example, do serverless computing to help you spin up and spin down resources on demand as necessary without having to pay for those clusters and nodes when they're not doing anything. That means a lot to companies. But accelerating digital transformation projects with serverless computing doesn't just, it doesn't just happen easily, and it isn't just a one fix for everything. Enterprise IT practitioners that are responsible for the software that powers, what they're investing in, they have to look at two very different fronts. They have to establish that infrastructure I was just talking about. And that often involves moving to public cloud platforms. It also involves changing their storage platform. Second is they have to basically conceive, build, deploy and manage the software that is, exercising those use cases and putting them into production. And creating harmony between those two is not easy, especially if you're trying to really deliver capability, performance, and security and availability all together at one time. And even more so to do so in an agile manner, like we were just talking about with serverless. So adapting to the changing business needs and accommodating emerging opportunities. So by opportunities, I'm talking about things like reaching down from the cloud to the edge in order to actually roll out new use cases like autonomous field tracking or predictive equipment maintenance and anything like that. And if you don't do that right, your digital transformation project can end up over budget, over time, and even end in outright failure. And because of that, we see at Omdia an increase in IT spend across the board, particularly in support of managing IT resources. And this reflects what we think is a difficulty in building modern software, honestly. Clearly it can be very difficult for companies to manage costs while driving innovation. And it's easy to see then that many companies, as a response to this over the years, have moved to open source software, particularly open source software, programming languages like Java. Compared to traditional, commercial software, open source and Java, they're the products of a diverse ecosystem, an invested community of supporters that are each working to solve their own problems, but in so doing, they're actually helping to solve the problems of the broader community. So it's not just about cheap, free. That's not what open source is about to me, anyway. And that's why we see enterprise practitioners, considering open source, and they consider it to be actually superior in quality in many ways to the proprietary counterparts that they have. As I said, it is generally considered to be free software, so it also allows them to take financial control of their development efforts and does so while simultaneously equipping them with a steady stream of innovations that you sometimes don't get from proprietary monolithic software. In this way, open source languages like Java, promise this interesting blend of both trust and innovation, that enables practitioners to really focus their efforts and their money on important business outcomes and innovation rather than on infrastructure and management and security. And, you would think that open source can just solve these problems on its own. And like serverless computing, it isn't a panacea. Simply adopting it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be able to lower costs and innovate more rapidly, because there are two sides to open source, and bringing those two sides into alignment with one another can be difficult. Let me explain. So first and foremost, open source software moves pretty rapidly, sometimes too rapidly, which can open up practitioners to a couple of potential issues. So if you're looking to stay with the most current release, for instance, you may, where the new features will work, to get them to work as you anticipate those new features and knowing that they're going to work in production, can be really difficult. And I'm talking about testing the software. I'm talking about making sure that, before you push it to production, it's not going to break. And the difficulty is that in open source communities, it's sometimes the contributors vary in their skill levels, and there are no pure standards for assessing quality for that software. So it can be a little bit dangerous sometimes to just take what comes without testing it first. Furthermore, that rapid adoption of new features can carry some unanticipated conflicts. So, conflicts, I'm talking about at a code level now, conflicts between, different language libraries, objects, and methods. When you adopt a new version of a programming language, you have to go back and look at all your code and find out not just what's been removed, but also what's changed, and that can take a lot of time. Ensuring that the new functionality works as desired can incur a lot of technical debt within organizations, especially those that are trying to manage multiple versions of a programming language like Java, for very large deployments in particular. And kind of part and parcel to that is the second big challenge, and that is, open source is no guarantee of security. So it's not just quality, it's security. And as we saw with the University of Minnesota earlier this year, if you folks are following that, where their team were purposefully injecting vulnerabilities into the Linux kernel in order to test supply chain weaknesses, that was really difficult to police and to ferret out. It went for some time without people even noticing it. So open source can be hard to control as an attack vector. And lastly, the adoption of open source really demands that practitioners spend their time and money navigating what I think are the murky depths of open source licensing itself. There are over 100 recognized open source licenses on the market, and they all are so subtly different from one another. And proving, that all of your active licenses, even a small number of them, to prove that they're in compliance can be very expensive and demand a lot of careful investigation. I'm talking about things like cross-licensing conflicts, even something as basic as just intended usage for the internal software. You have to be very careful about that before you push something to production. So with these caveats in mind, actually, I'd like to pause now and get your opinion, so I can take a sip of tea before my vocal cords die. I'd like to pause and get your opinion on this. So everybody, take a moment now and please register up to 3 selections here. So what are your top priorities when it comes to building software in Java? Is it staying on top of emerging security risks? Is it remaining compliant with those licensing requirements I was just talking about? Is it taking advantage of new features, as they come out? Is it ensuring, feature stability over time? So keeping your software stable over a number of years, not just months. Is it optimizing the developer productivity and satisfaction? Because we all know that what drives the success of a programming language is the productivity that it engenders within the developer community. And then lastly, is it establishing the adequate services and support to make sure that everything above is working like you want it to? So take a minute, give me a couple selections here. I see a good number coming in. Thank you all for doing that. Keep them coming. I'll mention now, while I wait just a moment longer, that as I said before, please feel free to submit any questions via our Q&A box, and Manish and I will answer them in just a few minutes as best we can. So let's see. Okay, what do we have, everyone? Wow, almost a tie between security and new features. That's interesting. But overall, and I think this speaks to who's on the line today, Developer productivity and satisfaction wins. It's all about things like the switch statement and giving developers what they want and how they program their code. I love that. Okay, thank you, everybody. I didn't get to take a sip. Let me do that. All right, so let's move on. And so for these kinds of reasons, enterprise consumers of open source are increasingly turning to third-party providers to help them with support services that help them innovate while also maintaining that high level of standard and security and compliance and quality. So I'm talking about things like subscribing to an enterprise support subscription for open source. So making your open source look like it's traditional, closed source software, but with all the benefits of being open source. And, I think we're all pretty accustomed to a lot of the benefits for this. And I've listed a number of them here, things like access to 24/7 support. But there are a lot of subtle reasons, I think, that make commercial support a crucial investment. And what that is to me is the ability for subscriptions like Oracle's Java SE subscription to really bring together under one package this, that full list you're looking at there. But for me, it's things like the direct access to major tech releases, the early access to critical performance, stability, and security updates, as well as that regulatory licensing and legal support we were talking about, and to do so in one subscription, in one package, and to do so across both your stable releases and your more frequent releases in between, which we'll talk about in a minute. The reason why you do it at the end of the day is to be able to adopt those new features and to do so in a trustworthy environment. But companies can't just run with every single new update that comes their way. They certainly don't do that. What companies want is the way to both explore new language developments while simultaneously being able to rely on stable releases that don't change frequently. And that sounds like something that can't be done. But it's interesting from my perspective as an analyst to note how Oracle, as the steward for Java, has been efforting to do just that. So going back to 2017, I think it was, when the company announced they were going to move to a 6-month release cycle. They before that had these huge releases, which you can see at the top of that chart there. And they wanted to embrace this new cadence. They no longer called them major releases. They wanted to be able to have folks gain access to new features more frequently, which we all have come to expect in a cloud native world. And internally, the company has seen, since doing that, they've seen quite an uptick in exploration of new features. So instead of sticking on 8 or 10, companies are doing POCs and working actively with the new releases. But Oracle felt that they weren't seeing the same level of uptick for getting those new versions into production, at least not right away. And so in response to that, very recently, Oracle shortened the release cycle for its long-term support releases, which you can see I've highlighted there on the chart. And they moved these. They were 3 years apart. Now they're 2 years apart. And the idea is basically to give developers more opportunities to move from those 6-month releases into a long-term support solution in production. So promises, to be able to move between the 6-month and the LTS releases, and to keep the security, the performance, the new features all in check. And this kind of thing, I think definitely can help companies modernize their software, because it's all about time to market. It's all about being able to move rapidly, is it not? But there's a lot there's a lot more that I think Java can do and should do to help companies modernize their software development efforts. It's not just about how fast they can move, with the Java language. To me, it's also about being able to have a platform, because remember, Java is not just a language, it's a platform and a language. Having a platform that can fully embrace cloud native demands, demands for that performance and flexibility. So do things like handle unforeseen usage patterns while also being able to adapt to new technologies, even new programming languages, let's say. And a great example of that to me is how Java has been evolving to become a more flexible platform. And the one I'm highlighting here, the investment is GraalVM. This was actually developed within Oracle Labs and is now an open source project that Oracle stewards. And it's included in the native JVM and as a part of the Oracle Java Platform Standard Edition. So it's everywhere. And they maintain it, as I said, as an open source project where they have a number of contributors that you will recognize: Amazon, Gluon, Neo4j, VMware, Alibaba, Twitter, Facebook even. Sorry, Facebook. I hope you guys are doing okay. But at any way, what it does, if you're not familiar with it, is it speeds up JVM startup times. So you can have your code running faster across all of its available platforms. So if you're doing IoT Edge, you're doing backend services, you're doing client, mobile client software, that software is going to behave much more like pure compiled software, which in a lot of ways the bytecode is kind of that. But anyway, it's not just about performance. It enables developers to bring together a polyglot of programming languages alongside Java, so to create a more unified platform that's agnostic, not just to the environment, but to what's running in the environment. That's pretty cool. So it supports Node.js. It does Python version 3.85, so just a couple versions behind 3.10, which is okay. Ruby, R, Graal, Wasm, which is the WebAssembly language. And, as you might imagine, it can do, there are a number of other languages that are on the docket, and even for those that haven't been invented yet, I'm sure. And I'd like to actually, finish this by just giving you a couple examples of where I've seen GraalVM. So Facebook has been using Java across big backend services. So not their routers, but the backend services and mobile use cases. So they're using it to accelerate their Spark data processing. So they have a huge number of Spark workloads, and they look to GraalVM to basically shrink their overall footprint for CPU usage and memory usage. Second thing where I've seen this is in Neo4j, the graph database, very, very popular. They're using GraalVM to allow their Java connector to execute queries from Ruby and R and Python natively within the Neo4j database. And this is what we all want. We, as developers, we want to have our choice of language without compromise. And that's what GraalVM really is doing here, which is, I think, super important. And there are many other ways that Oracle is helping folks modernize Java. And it's my pleasure now to welcome in, or to re-welcome in Manish Gupta, the VP of Global Marketing for Java and GraalVM at Oracle. And he's going to talk to you a little bit more about some of these use cases and the new, the way Java is being modernized within Oracle. So welcome, Manish. Take it away.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it. Well, great. Let's talk about how Java is helping enterprises modernize. So, dealing with customers all around the world, it's very clear that most organizations find that their application landscape falls in one of three buckets. Either they have a suite of applications that are running on-prem and they are in a maintenance mode, or they have applications that are being modernized, either to improve the performance or perhaps to change the deployment mode to move to the cloud. And finally, when they're building new applications, in most cases, it's cloud native or cloud first approach, but there might also be on-prem applications. And if you're large organizations, you may have hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of applications built in Java that fall in one of those three buckets. And so the complexity as a CIO or a CTO is to figure out how do you deal with that diverse and kind of fragmented in some ways application base that's running on different versions, different status of security, running and trying to manage and operate within your data governance principles, and the list is on and on. And so there are numerous challenges with that. I've listed what we have things that have risen to the top of the heap, so to say. Version management, running within the security baseline and compliance, ensuring that as you're evolving from on-prem to the cloud or operating in a multi-cloud or in a hybrid environment, how do you do that? How do you ensure you are continually optimizing your apps so that the performance is being improved over time? And how do you monitor and manage the status of things? How do you ensure that you're deploying the latest patches and updates, particularly for things and releases that have reached end of public updates? That becomes very difficult. And finally, if you have issues, how do you resolve it? How do you get access to the best-in-class technical competency and experience base that can resolve the issues quickly, as opposed to taking a long time to just try to do it by hit or miss methodology? And so the list is very long, but these are sort of the top 6 that tend to surface when we ask our customers and organizations around the world. And we bubble it up to the operators in the IT department, the managers, the directors, the VPs, that at the end of the day have to ensure things are running stably, they're delivering the best performance. They think of 3 things. I want to make sure that the risks associated with management of this large base are mitigated to the best possible. I want to have agility in my business so that I can move at the pace that the business requires. And finally, I'm always in this transformation mode. And we talk about digital transformation, and it's got numerous elements underneath it, but I'm constantly in transformation mode. How do I get support? So those are the things that are top of mind when we think about evolving Java, the platform, and providing the right attributes so that the customers are ready and comfortable to deal with this complexity. And Java has served the needs of this enterprise landscape and organizations around the world for the last 26 years. It's just incredible for us and gratifying to see that it continues to be the preferred choice when developers are looking for programming language to start new projects or to evolve their existing programs and applications. Java is still at the top. Even when we think about in the age of the cloud or cloud native environments, it continues to be at the top. There are 56 billion JVMs that are actively running around the world, of which over 60% are cloud-based. So, people talk about Java as though it's a language of 26 years ago, but really it's a language of 26 years ago that's highly relevant and at the top of the heap for the next 26 years, right? And these stats simply support those dynamics. Also very interesting to see that the developer community, whether you are a high school student that are aspiring to be a software engineer, or you've been in the industry for 30 years, you are touching Java. 75% of all developers use Java. And in our recent analysis recently, over 98% of Fortune 100 companies are hiring Java. So highly vibrant, deployed, and utilized everywhere. As you heard from Brad a moment ago, starting with Java 10, we initiated the 6-month release cadence. The real primary driver was to make the availability of innovation quicker, faster, and put it in the hands of developers so they could take advantage of it. In the past, it would be 3 years, 4 years, sometimes longer, and you would get this heavy-duty kind of release that would have large number of features that now the organizations and the developers and managers have to grapple with. How do you put that into play, into production, without sacrificing security, without sacrificing performance, and taking advantage of those capabilities, all coming to you at the same time? With the 6-month release cadence, it became more bite-sized, easier to digest, and very importantly, predictable in nature. You know, like clockwork, every 6 months, you're going to get innovation coming to you. So you don't have to wait for 3 years, and you get the steady stream. And that was really the big thing, and it's been well received. It also gave the ecosystem a better shot at mapping to compliance, to certification, to ensuring they can meet and map to these new capabilities with the frameworks and tools and such within the ecosystem. And along with the 6-month release cadence, every 3 years, Oracle also offers the long-term support release. So we used to have JDK 8, and then we had 11, and most recently 17. And as Brad mentioned, we have now shrunk from 3 years to 2 years. So the really LTS support, LTS releases will now be available every 2 years. And these LTS releases are simply accumulation of all of the features and capabilities and innovations that have come in intervening releases packaged together, which works well for organizations that are really looking for a long-term, easier to manage, a highly predictable environment that they can manage at scale, and tends to be important for larger organizations in most cases. And that is a new paradigm. What has not changed is that the long-term support releases still come with the eight-year support that Oracle provides to the customers.
Yeah, so Manish, thank you for that. And yeah, the 8-year support I think is crucial. And I know that customers, depending on their contracts, can even go longer, which is important for a lot of ISVs. But I'm back to actually ask the audience a question again. So guys, get ready, get on your keyboards. I want to hear from you. What version of Java are you using most regularly? What is your go-to version right now? As I know you have multiple projects on different versions, but what is the biggest bang right now for you? If you could, go ahead and fill this out, and holy crap, keep going. Yeah, thank you guys. Keep submitting, and I will also stop to ask if you are going to, to ask you to basically submit any questions you might have for Manish and I, and we will answer them as we go toward the end here. So thank you. I'd like to hear a couple more. Yes, very good, guys. All right. I know I want crucial statistics that we can rely on, and so I'm sorry to pause everyone here, but I'm dying to know what your go-to language version is. So I guess let's pause and now look at the results and see where we're at. Okay, Java 11, yeah, that rings true. What do you think, Manish?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking it'll be a heated debate between 8 and 11. Good to see 11. Things are moving on. That's great.
Yeah, because we were, I think if we asked this question a couple of years ago, 8 would have probably been the dominant one. Huh?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to turn it back over to you now, Manish. Thank you, everyone, for submitting those.
That was great to see. Yeah. One of the things that's very important for us is to ensure, I know this chart is somehow got altered in the view, but and maybe hard to read. What the graph represents is the contribution to the enhancements and fixes and innovations that go into every releases. This particular graphic shows between 12 and 17, I believe, is the actual summation, or between JDK 11 and JDK 17. And it comes within the OpenJDK, contributions from many, many individuals and organizations. What we like to highlight is that we are taking the investment and innovation of the open source and OpenJDK very, very seriously, and continue to be the leading innovator and contributor to the OpenJDK process. And so from 11 through 17, the accumulated investment that's gone in and the number of contributions, Oracle has represented 80+% in almost every release, and cumulatively here as well. But we are really grateful for the participation and contributions from many organizations and individuals around the ecosystem. On the right-hand side, on top of the actual work itself and the platform itself is the fact that there is such a vibrant community. And that's really important. And Brad talked to the power of open source. And we truly believe that you cannot have a long-term sustaining success in the marketplace without the community involvement. OpenJDK, of course, is the platform on which all the innovation happens through the various memberships. But we have 350 plus Java user groups. We have got 300 plus Java champions now out there. Oracle University, Oracle Academy, ensuring that the resources are available to high school students, college students, people that want to get certifications and so on. And the list of activities are long, but it's really important that that community is vibrant, and Oracle works very hard to support the needs of the community beyond just the technology and support there. I want to talk a little bit about an element that Brad touched upon, which is when you have a large suite of applications running on a platform or a technology like Java, you really need to be able to manage it well. And particularly when you are based on open source and framework, how might that work? And management means a lot of things to a lot of people. What we have tried to bring to the marketplace for our customers is this service called Java Management Service. It's a native service running on Oracle Cloud infrastructure that gives you a single pane of glass where you can get the visibility into what versions of Java are running, what's the security posture and profile of those. It gives you insights on things like perhaps you ought to update certain applications where you might be falling behind your security baseline, where you might be able to improve your protection, reduce your risk, and the list of things are quite long. But again, it's about visibility and insight. And over time, the roadmap and the intention and what Java Management Service is trying to give is not just visibility and insight, but also tuning capabilities so your performance is updated and kept at pace with your business requirements. So that's what this service is about, again, to give ease of management to your Java estate. The second thing, which you also heard from Brad quite a bit, and we are very excited to incorporate the Crawl VM Enterprise as part of the Java SE subscription at no incremental cost, is this powerful technology that allows you to boost your performance on existing code, or if you were to compile in a native image or ahead of time compilation mode, you get instantaneous startup time, you get reduced memory footprint, and you get reduced requirement for your compute. And hence you can put those together and see if you're running an application in your cloud bill drops dramatically. So you get a boost in performance and you get a reduced cost, right? It's a great combination. And that's what's available for free to the customers of Java SE subscription. And so I want to dig a little bit deeper into what is this Java SE subscription. When we defined this service, we wanted to make sure we were democratizing the access to the premier support for everybody. This is not just for the Fortune 10 or the Fortune 100 or the Global 2000. This truly is meant for every single entity that is running on Java. We wanted to make sure that if you're a 5-person development shop, a 100-person development shop, or Fortune 10, you would have access to the same suite of capabilities. You get the binaries on Oracle JDK through a commercial license, which gives you things like long-term support access. You get access to the global Oracle support, which is 24/7, all year round in 27 languages, provided by the most experienced Java experts in the marketplace. You have access to management tools like the Java Management Service I just talked about, but also Advanced Management Console that's been around for some time. Crawl VM Enterprise we just talked about. You get updates also for releases that have reached end of public update. Again, very important to maintain the security posture. And so we wanted to package all of these things together in a very simple to understand pricing model. It's a pricing model that's transparent, published on the website, discount structures published on the website. On the server side, it's $25 per processor per month. And on the desktop, it's $2.50 per desktop per month on an annualized basis. So very simple pricing structure that discounts with scale over time. And it meets the things that, if you remember the chart I presented earlier, it gives security and compliance, management and support, business flexibility, and performance and efficiency, the things that matter to the IT managers in enterprises and organizations. And we have seen that over the last several years, this is an analysis done by one of our third-party firms, where they looked at the cost of operating your Java estate on your own upgrade time cycle versus running it under Java SE subscription. And there was roughly a 30% savings. Whether you're a very large enterprise or a medium-sized enterprise, you would see about a 30% savings in over a 4-year period. So not only do you get package access to all the things I talked about in the previous slide, but it's highly quantifiable value proposition as you think about what the cost is to run your Java estate. And so the result of that has been really gratifying for us, that we have seen thousands of customers, small development houses to Fortune 10 organizations. Over half of Fortune 500 companies now are on the customer list, which is really great to see. And as you can see, it's every industry, every geography around the world. The Net Promoter Score or the customer sat score has been very high. The renewal rates are very high. And this to us is just an indication that people are and organizations are driving the value that we were anticipating when we first launched this service. And I want to close out with just the 3 very simple things. Java has been and continues to accelerate innovation with the new release cycle. The ecosystem, whether you think about the tools, frameworks, and such, or you think about the number of developers in the marketplace, continues to thrive. And finally, Oracle's commitment has never been stronger to driving both technical innovation and support for the communities around Java. So, we feel very strong about Java's ability to support the next 25 plus years of innovation moving forward. With this, I'll pass it back to Brad.
Great. Thank you, Manish. And everybody, settle in, grab you a cup of tea, and we are going to spend the next 15 or so minutes answering your questions. So I am very grateful to you for submitting those. These are terrific, the ones we've gotten. So thank you all. And let's see. I'm going to begin, Manish, with an easy softball one, just because we totally deserve that. And where do you see Java heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's a pretty broad question. I could take a whole day answering that question. But Java development is about many things. It's about improving performance. Somebody mentioned earlier in the poll you took, it's about improving developer productivity, making their lives easier for developers. It's about supporting the new trends, whether it is cloud native app development, whether it's transformation related to moving from one mode to the other. We're trying to cover a pretty broad spectrum. But what we don't want to sacrifice, regardless of what things are in terms of the innovation bucket, is security, stability, and predictability. So whatever people think about innovation, one of the things that they ought to know, and a lot of hard work goes in ensuring this happens, is that you will get what Java has been advertised for. So if you're applying and leveraging this development platform, it will meet the needs of what you've done before. You will not lose the work that was put into work, the investment that was made earlier. It will always work. And that's one of those things that sometimes gets lost in the talk about future and the talk about innovation and moving forward, is the fact that you need to bring the investment you've made earlier forward. And it matters for enterprises a lot, because you don't want to throw away the work that's been done or find that your future innovation doesn't allow for connectivity and certification and compliance and stability of your prior work that's been done. So a lot of effort goes into ensuring, while the innovation is done to support machine learning and cloud native app development and microservice frameworks, we are ensuring that security and compatibility with prior versions doesn't go away. So I'll pause there and stop with that question. We can take many other directions.
Great answer. And that modernization of Java, the language, and the platform, to me is key to how the language is going to evolve. Because when you look at many other popular languages, whether Haskell is the most loved language on the planet, or Rust, I think it's Rust. Excuse me. That those have ecosystems, but Java's ecosystem is unique in that, it is made up of everyone who builds and contributes the thousands upon thousands of libraries that, help me as a developer do everything from basic IO to laying out a rapid app design for a mobile client. But it's that platform ecosystem to me that I think is going to drive the way that Java evolves, such that it is, you have 50 reserved words in the language, and it's a simple basic language really, and it can do anything because of that ecosystem. And so seeing the platform and the language evolving together to me is how it's going to move forward over the next 25 years. All right, so I'm going to ask another question. I like this. So what are the key areas remaining where Java still has an opportunity to be in the pole position, nice racing analogy, in the enterprise class software? So when competing with other technologies that don't seem to be too handicapped as well. So I think what we're talking about here are the other languages, obviously. So Manish, what are your thoughts on that? Where can it compete? Where do you think its sweet spot is to be in front?
Yeah, if you go back to the statistics I shared earlier, and if you talk to any organization, whether it's next to the office you operate in or around the other part of the world, you will find that almost every single organization continues to and plans to continue to use Java. So it is not, in my mind, a question of where is the remaining space for Java. To me, it is truly everywhere. And we constantly have our pulse on the marketplace through surveys and talking to customers and engaging with the community. There are, I find it hard to identify verticals where Java doesn't exist, right? We have customers that are using subscription, and of course, Java broadly is used even more than that. So it's hard to say where it will be, because it is in all spaces. It's a technology that's mature because it's been around for a long time, but it's a technology that's constantly evolving. It provides best-in-class options for many of the common problems that are faced for designing, developing, operating, and maintaining complex enterprise applications, particularly when you think about mission critical, when you think about distributed deployment, when you think about large-scale deployment. Java is the go-to. It is not a fad language that is exciting for a year or two and then finds itself drop in the ranking, right? It has been in the top 1, 2, or 3, depending on which survey you look at, for the past 26 years now. And we don't see that changing. And everything we've talked about today, Brad, whether it is the large number of developers, whether it is a support of the frameworks and the toolkits, whether it's the deployments that exists out there, the experience space, the backward compatibility, the security, all of those things are necessary for long-term vibrant health of a development platform. And good for Java, it has those things going for it. So, to answer this and to summarize it, we think Java will continue to be everywhere.
Yeah, that everywhere is key. From my vantage point, looking at artificial intelligence and how companies build those outcomes in the enterprise, it is always interesting to note that, as you said, Manish, it's that secure, trusted platform that is going to do what it's supposed to do, and it's going to be governable and manageable. And everybody knows that Python, is the key language for building data science, for doing data science. But I don't know if everyone knows this, but almost half of all projects get recoded into other languages before they go to production. And Java is one of those languages that's crucial, together with, I think, Scala is another good one. But it's the reason why it's being refactored as Java is because it can be deployed anywhere, it can be secured, and it can be managed, and it's performant, most importantly. And that's why in financial services in particular, you see Java data science, as a huge, use case for things like real-time fraud detection. All right, so let me go to the polls. And okay, this is an interesting one because it gets into the nitty gritty of open source. So I hope you don't mind, Manish. But I'm curious as to the characterization of Java, particularly Java as within Oracle's stable, as open source with quotes. What makes it more open source than C++, Golang, or TypeScript? OpenJDK is certainly open source, but there is open source tool chains in every language, absolutely, in production. And I think I can think of except possible COBOL. Yeah, wow, COBOL. That brings back memories. But anyway, what do you think about that? What is it truly open source to you about it?
Yeah, don't be flippant, but that is the heart and soul of Java. OpenJDK, and sometimes there's lack of clarity in the marketplace. OpenJDK is where the development happens. It is a transparent, inclusive approach and process where you can go and see what is coming in future releases. It's very well laid out. You can see the various projects that are running within OpenJDK, what the focus is, and as it gets closer, there are preview cycles. You can test and try and check the performance and the capabilities of the new releases that are coming up. You can see who the contributors are. You can see how many contributors are in any given release. So it is let's call it the platform of how, and a model platform of how open source projects should be run. So Java is, having had 26 years of history, amongst the longest running open source platforms and projects. And it's available as a GPL license, the OpenJDK distribution from Oracle, which gets utilized and used by others as well. Now, along with that, there are commercial versions of the distribution that are available from Oracle. So Oracle JDK is a commercial version. It is very, very similar in terms of the binaries, but then we try to bring additional value to the customers where we layer in things like access to releases. The long-term support goes with the commercial license. We offer access to the best-in-class support services. We give you access to releases that have reached end of public updates and things I mentioned earlier in the slide. So those are things that come with the commercial license. But to the question of open source, it's OpenJDK. You can get it from Oracle. You can get it from other companies based on the OpenJDK output from the OpenJDK process. And so it is, it is the definition of open source.
Yeah, and it's that, the OpenJDK and how you have a vibrant competitive ecosystem around it. It's not, just Oracle to me that is going to be responsible for the continued success of Java. It's what market dynamics are built on. So yeah, I fully agree with you there. All right, so we have time, I think, for one or two more. This one is, I know it's early days, but we have a question about what's been the general perception of Oracle's announcement of the long-term support release cadence change. So going from the 3 years to the 2 years.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the long-term support is really an accumulation of all the innovations that's occurred since the previous long-term support. Right. So when Java 17 was released, everything from 11 or 12 onwards through 16, those features came together. It's now packaged as Java 17 or JDK 17. And so for organizations that really are interested in deploying at massive scale and want to focus on fewer iterations of upgrade cycles, they may go from LTS to LTS. And for those organizations, it was important to be able to access these innovations at a faster clip than waiting for 3 years. And so the general consensus in the marketplace and the feedback we received was, while 6-month predictability is great, not every organization is at that pace. And if they were moving with the long-term support release cadence, 3 years felt perhaps was a little too long. And so we were trying to find a happy medium between, giving them the fully, kind of supported long-term support version that they want to rely on, but bringing it quicker to them, and not doing it as soon, as often as every 6 months or every 1 year, because that simply becomes too onerous from the investment required. So the 2-year release cadence was a good happy medium, and the feedback so far, again, we just released it on September 14th, so it is very, very new, has been overwhelmingly positive. But important to realize, not everybody waits for long-term support releases. There are many organizations that are doing the 6-month cadence. Some are moving at the pace that works for them. That's in between the 2 years, 3 years, or 6 months. And some will wait for the LTS. And now they have the ability to do that every 2 years.
Wonderful. Now, I actually would like to end us on a request as well as a question, but just because I think it's a wonderful representation of just how diverse the Java developer ecosystem is and how vibrant it is and engaged. And that question is this. We have a small Java training institute in the Caribbean where we're trying to get low-income kids and underemployed individuals certified in Java. What opportunities are there, if any, for Oracle to support Code Camp Caribe in Dominica, not the Dominican Republic, by the way? So it's more of a request, but I think if you don't mind, I'd love just to spend the last few minutes talking about Oracle support for these developer communities and what sort of plans you might have, not just for the Caribe in Dominica, but in general for bringing together these grassroots efforts.
I love it. I love that question. Please ping me directly, and we'll put you in touch with the right people. But that particular type of effort, endeavor, initiative is what our community outreach is all about, and we have multiple mechanisms by which we address these things. The Oracle Academy works with the various educational institutions specifically to bring about an access to Java-related courses in this context to communities of all ages and around the world. Oracle University has certifications. Many are free certifications, so you can go in and try out a Java certification and an Explorer badge without having to pay for anything, and so on. In addition to that, we have a very strong developer program around Java, where we support user groups, we support other organizations around the world for exactly the things that are brought up here. So I would say, please continue with your efforts. Send us a note. We will connect you with the right resources within Oracle. And it is our hope that just like you are pursuing this program in your part of the world, there are many such programs and initiatives that are happening all around the world to make Java accessible to everybody.
Terrific. Thank you, Manish. And yeah, thank you for that question. That is wonderful. And everyone, thank you for joining us on today's webinar. And Manish, thank you for sharing your expertise with us. That was terrific.
It's been great. I've enjoyed it, Brad. Thank you.
And everybody, there's going to be an archived version of this webinar that'll be available to you shortly. So feel free to come back and view this session again with the same URL, and you'll get to that. And you can, and we very much would welcome you to follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. You can see the links. I think they're in the toolkit. And again, everyone, thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.